These newspaper article readings are not for the faint-hearted or the squeamish. If you're at all sensitive, I might suggest these aren't for you. If in doubt, check the description below. It'll tell you which topics are covered in this particular episode. There's both human and animal suicides, and you heard that right. There's also horrific descriptions of injuries, as well as the deaths of youngsters. So don't do it to yourself if you're prone to nightmares, is all I'll say right now. Not all the articles are horrible. Some of them are uplifting, some of them show incredible bravery and heroism. There are near misses. So these were picked as showing life prior to health and safety, as well as for the crazy and curious details some contain, with other miscellaneous happenings that kind of struck me enough to post the articles to Twitter, despite not having too much relevance to Scotland necessarily. These are worldwide topics, and they didn't have any real connection to the projects that I was working on and researching at the time. I just happened to have come across them by the way, kind of thing. So we'll get into them, shall we? What we're going to do here is we're going to do a lucky dip of newspaper articles to really mix them up a wee bit, because while I'm doing the researches, I'm obviously coming up with the same kind of terms and things. So we'll mix them up even further. So to that end, I have all of the newspaper titles and dates of the articles. Okay, what does the hat have for us this episode? Let's find out, shall we? Okay, so we have the East of Fife record for the 24th of November 1905. East of Fife record is not one we hear from often. Alright, so this is a pretty good one to start off with. It's entitled Then and Now. Once upon a time, Mr. Andrew Carnegie, the multimillionaire iron master, being hungry and penniless and at a distance from any place of refreshment, helped himself, without invitation, to the contents of a railway engine driver's dinner pail. He has now sent the engine driver £200 by way of a reminder of the incident and in payment of the food. The delighted recipient, who had quite forgotten the matter, told a reporter that now he will take care never to be without a dinner pail with something in it, in case other millionaires might happen along. And that's from the East of Fife record for the 24th of November 1905. And that's a really good story. I can't find fault with that. Mr. Carnegie, despite it having apparently been years, and he's managed to make something of himself to the point where he now has more money than I think was possible to spend at the time. He's still not forgotten the fact that maybe his life was saved. His hunger was certainly satiated by this guy's lunch, and he hasn't forgotten that. To the point where he hasn't forgotten even how to get money to the guy. He still remembers where it was, etc., for the money to actually make it to the original owner of the lunch that he scarfed. So I think that's a great story. And good on him, you know. We'll see what we have next. We have the Komarnik Herald in North Ayrshire Gazette for the 11th of January 1907. Let's see what this has for us. Okay, we've a couple here. While a large number of navvies were at work in a railway cutting near Lamsheed, Rhine province, the banks collapsed, burying 2 of them alive. While a rescue party was attempting to extricate them, a second fall took place and 30 or 40 were buried. The dead number at least 15. It's followed by an extraordinary bomb outrage was perpetrated in Philadelphia on Saturday. A man entered the office of the National Bank and asked a loan of $5,000. On the cashier refusing, the man drew out a bomb and tossed it over the grill. The cashier and the assassin were blown to pieces, and a messenger was so seriously injured that he died shortly afterwards. Many other persons were injured, some seriously. And that's from the Komarnik Herald and North Ayrshire Gazette for the 11th of January 1907. The first. I think we've already had at least one story in this series where men were buried alive, and it was at a railway cutting. This was really dangerous work. There wasn't health and safety to avoid these kind of entombments, at work. So, that's really terrible. 2 are buried alive, and 30 or 40 end up entombed just trying to get them out. Makes you wonder whether they weren't better leaving it so only 2 could be entombed. I think human nature supersedes any idea of minimising loss of life in these kind of events. The immediate instinct in humanity is just to help. Just get in there and get them out, So these 30 or 40 that have been part of trying to get these guys out need to be commended for acting on that instinct. But that 15 at least died for 2 original entombed. And you can see in hindsight that it didn't make sense. That human nature tends to win out. So I think they had to make the effort at least. The second, I'm going to have to assume that the $5,000 this guy asked for was so necessary that his life wasn't worth anything if he wasn't to get a hold of it. Perhaps he owed somebody that had threatened his life if he didn't pay them back. Perhaps it's a case of the other side of these family annihilator scenarios where a man feels like he's no longer able to support his family, and so he kills them to seemingly mainly to avoid the struggle. He's wanting them to avoid the hardship that him not being able to support them is going to, encourage. So perhaps it's that kind of thing. Perhaps his family are just going to be in dire straits. They're going to be absolutely destitute if he's not able to obtain this money. And maybe that's what's led him to these actions. Couldn't tell you. But to kill himself as well as the worker in the bank, it's an act of desperation, is what that says to me. We'll have another one. We have the Southern Reporter for the 17th of November 1904. We'll see what the Southern Reporter has. Okay, we have a careless smoker's action and its result. An unusual burning fatality is reported from Renfrew. A man named Thomas Wilson, a labourer, after lighting his pipe carelessly threw the match, which he had used, backwards towards the fireplace. It struck against the back of the dress of his wife, who was sitting at the fire at the time, and the match, still being alight, the dress caught fire. When the woman discovered what had occurred, the flames had got a good hold, and before they were extinguished, she was very badly burned all over the body. She was removed to the Paisley Infirmary, where she succumbed to her injuries. Can't imagine his guilt. Providing it was an accident, that is. And the fright she'd have got anyway. It's saying that she only noticed after the flames had got a good hold, so she'd have been in fear for her life from the moment she noticed. I hope he made a good effort. It doesn't say, but I hope he made a good attempt to extinguish his wife. I think there would have likely been an intimation of his having been arrested had he raised suspicions at all. So maybe it was just an accident. That's quite the accident. We'll have another one. We have the Dundee Evening Telegraph for the 4th of May 1900. Okay, this is another short article. It's a weird one. A strange collision. A collision between a pigeon and a railway train recently occurred in Georgia. The train was going at about 60 miles an hour when a pigeon came into collision with the glass window of the cab in which the engine driver sits at work. The beak of the bird struck him in the eye, piercing the eyeball, temporarily blinding him, and the blindness may become permanent. The bird was killed by the contact with the window, and after striking the man's face, fell on the floor of the cab. So great was the momentum of the train and the bird's body that the glass window was not smashed by the blow, but was cut as clean as if a bullet had been fired through it. And that's from the Dundee Evening Telegraph for the 4th of May, 1900. Kind of puts you in mind of a cartoon, you know, when cartoon characters slam through walls and leaves an outline of them. I just imagine a bird outline in the front window of the train. But that's crazy. And I can't believe that he's going to have regained his sight if the bird's beak pierced his eyeball. I mean, that's a crazy workplace injury. I'm pretty sure no one's going to have expected that could even happen. But there we go. We now know that it's possible and it has happened at least once. We'll have another one. We'll have a last one since these have been kind of small ones. Chance a last one. Let's have a look. We have the East of Fife record for the 19th of July 1907. Is that not a bit weird to have two East of Fife records? Alright. This one's entitled Better Dead. A man's life was not very valuable 100 years ago. If he scratched his name on Westminster Bridge, if he wore a wig or false moustache or other disguise on a public road, if he cut down a young tree, if he stole property worth more than 5 shillings, if he had been transported for crime and returned a day ahead of the expiration of his punishment, if he wrote a threatening letter, if he stole a hide from a tanner's, for any and all of these things, and for 200 more than these, he was hanged by the neck until dead. The problem of crime was solved in those days by putting the criminal to death on the theory that there was no hope of regenerating a felon, and while he lived, his influence would spread and corrupt the community. It was better, therefore, for his own sake, as well as that of society, that he should be dead. And that's from the East of Fife record for the 19th of July, 1907. Yeah, I would agree with that. I can't disagree with any of that. It's all entirely correct. When Scotland got into union with England, Scottish laws couldn't be subverted by the English Parliament, but they could be amended slightly, and a whole bunch of capital crimes were added to Scotland's already extant list of capital crimes. In Scotland, people were killed for crimes far less and for far fewer things than they were in England. So it's an inheritance we got along with the Union, but obviously nowadays capital crime across Britain, all the countries of Britain, have been nixed. People don't get killed for anything anymore. Whole life terms are the most that you can be punished with here. And I think there's only about 20 people in the whole of Britain that have been condemned to a whole life tariff, meaning that they'll never get out alive. So it's a nice wee roundup of how strict things used to be, I guess. So I like that as an ending. And it is an ending. So we will see you again maybe next time. Take care.